the biggest story of the day, and it's not actually in the paper because it hasn't happened yet, but we're going to do it anyway. So in an event that he and his lawyers have arranged to hit prime time mass ratings, the loser ex-president, Donald Trump, is going to walk into Fulton County Sheriff's Office in Georgia to be charged with racketeering in a conspiracy to steal votes and overthrow the 2020 election. Now, Lizzie, he is so keen on everyone knowing about this. He's been posting the time and place on his social media network. He's absolutely milking this for all the publicity he can get, isn't he?
Yeah, it's extraordinary that he's kind of, treating this as it's some sort of, well, I suppose he's treating it as it's some sort of election event, which in a way it is. So Trump is obviously has to present himself to Fulton County Sheriff by midday their time. So I think that's about 5 p.m. here. And he's clearly, not doing this quietly in any way. He's been talking about it a lot. He clearly wants his supporters to see this happening to him. And obviously an ordinary politician would perhaps not want making a lot of their sort of...
they'd ask to go in the back door, wouldn't they, normally? Yeah,
totally. And, Trump is facing a number of criminal, he's been a number of criminal charges in a number of different places. He's already been this latest round of kind of accusations about conspiracy around the 2020 election result in Georgia. It comes after he's been up before the authorities in New York, in Florida, and also in DC. And so this is all kind of part of this bigger picture of all of this, of the kind of, I suppose, the establishment versus him that he's sort of putting to his supporters as, this is them trying to stop me, they're trying to bring me down, and this way that he presents himself as being an outsider candidate, even though he's been the president and also has been as part of the American elite for many, many years.
Exactly. So, a man who inherited millions of pounds, who has lost billions of pounds, who doesn't seem to have to pay the same taxes as everybody else or face the same laws as everybody else, is saying that he's an outsider is kind of just astonishing. Maybe he just means he's the only person with skin colour like that, and he's in a minority of tangerine. Now, this is for the first 234 years, right, of America's history, no president ever got indicted for anything. Or former president for that matter, but that all changed this year. In the space of 4.5 months, which is 18 weeks, in the space of 18 weeks, Donald Trump was charged in 4 criminal cases. In New York, he's facing 34 felony counts in connection with hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels. In Florida, he's facing another 40 felony counts for hoarding classified documents and impeding efforts to retrieve them. Those are the papers that he hid in his bathroom. And in Washington, D.C., he's got another 4 felony counts for his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Now, that is already 78 charges, right? But in Georgia now, he faces another 13, which is 91 counts together for his election interference in Georgia when he was asking officials to find him some votes. Now, he's just indicted in all these things. He's just charged. And all this is yet to play out. Now, he's milking all this for publicity. He plainly wants attention for it. But everybody, what do you think? Should he be getting it? Should we just ignore him at this point? Is he just an alleged criminal who is not worth notice, or is this something that we should be paying attention to? Is the publicity he's going to get, Lizzie, actually any good? Because, what Trump is publicising, basically, is his alleged criminality, isn't it? The ability he has to polarise people. Judging from how all his many previous sort of post-power court cases have gone, the way they've been conducted, he's going to lose bigly. I mean, if you're facing 91 charges, you've only got to be convicted on some of them, and you're going down. And here's a president being accused of organised crime at the very heart of America's democracy. Carl says Trump will be the GOP candidate and will go on to annihilate sleepy Joe Biden. None of the charges will stick. All they're doing is promoting Trump. Yes, but Carl, this is the point. They're promoting him as a criminal. It's like giving publicity to Al Capone. You know, does it mean that Al Capone's going to get voted for? No, it just means everyone knows he's Al Capone and he goes around baseballing people in the head or whatever. This is going to enrage and delight and enliven his base, isn't it, Lizzie? But the rest of America is not his base, and that they're in the majority. So they're going to be horrified that the way this all plays out, aren't they?
Well, I wonder whether all it does is sort of entrench the positions that people already have. So Donald Trump's supporters who believe he was unfairly treated, you know, that he should have won the election, maybe buy into some of the conspiracies that he peddled at the time and that he's continued to promote around it. This is only going to further fuel their sort of sense of injustice and their support for him. And then people who hate him and consider him rightly to be a terrible president and someone with, at best, very sort of dubious grasp of the law. Those people are going to continue not to vote for him. I suppose the only thing that matters in that is the people in the middle, whether you can peel people off from who voted Trump last time, who see this and just think, you know what, this is too much. Like he's clearly sort of on another planet. Or whether you can get enough to basically get that over the line. But I mean, we do have to remember as well that he's not even the Republican candidate yet. Yeah. I think there's a debate going on later today with like some of the other people throwing themselves in the ring, like Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, that sort of thing. And while that's going on, he's going to present himself to Fulton County Sheriff. So that tells you everything you need to know kind of about where the race is. But ultimately, you know, he is still very popular amongst Republicans. And I don't know, it's hard to see where this goes. I mean, obviously it's giving him a huge platform for better or for worse. But if he gets found guilty, if he gets convicted, you know, the timing, what happens if he's the candidate and some of these charges stick, or he becomes president and some of these charges stick? What do you do then?
Inside a jail cell is a whole new thing. I mean, lots of presidents do end up in jail cells, but they usually stop being a president when that happens and someone else takes over. Mike says Trump could be the first presidential candidate to campaign from inside a jail cell. It's all kind of astonishing, but when it comes to his popularity, someone's ringing me, go away. When it comes to his popularity, it does seem that it's been a bit on the slip. So overall, in America, the latest polls have shown that over time, only a third of Americans have a favourable view of Donald Trump these days. Nearly 2/3, 63%, have an unfavourable view. Now, that is a big enough chunk, you'd have thought, that you're not going to become president. Just isn't going to happen. But within the Republican Party, which of course has been very Trumpist for a long time, Trumpety maybe, they did have a 75% favourable rating for him last year, and that slipped to 66. So he's dropped 10 points in the past year as all these charges have come through. Now you've got a whole bunch of Republicans who are they want to be the candidate, don't they? And they want to run. People like Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador, and Ron DeSantis. And they're all doing quite badly because they're not getting the publicity. What Donald Trump's really good at is getting the publicity and doing the PR and the spin. He's soaking up all the oxygen, isn't he? And he's getting all the attention within the Republican Party as well, which leaves the other potential candidates just struggling to make any headway at all. And I think maybe that's the thing. He's not necessarily aiming at the presidency. He's aiming at the nomination and hoping other things fall into line afterwards. And frankly, if he goes on trial for all this stuff, his base is going to be really motivated to get out and vote for him in the primaries, make him their candidate. It's going to be a huge division, huge arguments about it. And then, you know, a year or so down the line, when there's actually a presidential election, that's all something else. He's not even worrying about that. I think he's just going to do a really good job of soaking up that nomination, isn't he?
Yeah, He's totally soaking up the oxygen. You're entirely right. And I think for the other candidates as well, obviously, they don't want to be, they don't want to be seen to be the ones who are like trying to knife him. They don't want to alienate people who do support him, who might be able to come over to their side if they got the nomination. So you can see that there's a bit of tentativeness there, but obviously that means that no one's really challenging him, and he's just continuing to take up all the space. And one of the things that's interesting about the charges in Georgia as well is that their legal system means that I think some of it could potentially be televised. So obviously in the other, this is a real kind of media circus, because, at this, when he arrives there today, he could potentially get a mugshot, he could get fingerprinted, be treated like an ordinary person who's turning themselves in to face charges. So that's all kind of adds to this picture. And then, I think the courts in Georgia can potentially televise some of their hearings if they want to. So imagine if that does happen, the kind of capacity for taking up the airwaves will be even greater if people can watch Trump on trial and that sort of thing.
But then what does that mean for the next presidential race? What do you think, everybody? Because as I think it was Kevin pointed out earlier on, you're going to have Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate, unless he just falls permanently asleep between now and then. And Biden and Trump again is going to make a lot of people turn off a little bit. Now, Trump's ahead among Republican voters, but even when he won the election, Trump was less popular than Al Gore, who lost. He's less popular than Mitt Romney, who lost, and they both conceded defeat. If the Republicans back Trump and he loses, then Biden will probably be the next president. He'll be even older and even sleepier. And how divided is America going to be after they've had another rerun of that incredibly? I'm a little bit sad for America, because I can't see any way through this unless a Republican comes out and says, do you know what? This isn't what the Republican Party should be. Let's take our party back. Let's be the GOP, the Grand Old Party again, and let's not do this guy. That's the only way through it, isn't it?
I think you're completely right. Like at the moment, it just looks like it looks so knotty, like how there don't seem to be many paths through this, and a repeat of the last presidential race would just be, so damaging. And also, I think, because that's all been played out once already, if you've got Trump versus Biden again, it's only going to be a more extreme version of the last time, because Trump has already done everything he can to have a go at Joe Biden, or sleepy Joe Biden, in the first race. So if he's going to take him on again, he will obviously have to crank up his tactics. And I just think, for America as a nation, that is a very unpleasant space to be, a divisive space to be in, when there's so many problems that actually need to be solved. I'm sort of a little apprehensive about our next election. So I think theirs is much worse than ours. We
don't have anybody that colour, at least, who's going to be running in the next election. And the thing is that, when they do this, they're going to have a trial which is going to be supposed to be very quick. The Georgia prosecutor says she wants it to happen super, super quick. But it involves a lot of co-conspirators. One of them is Rudy Giuliani, who is the former mayor of New York, and as mayor of New York was a zero-tolerance, crime-busting, lock them all up for chewing gum kind of guy. And there are some great stories coming out from New York at the moment, one of which is saying that the many members of the New York mob, who he used to use racketeering charges to lock up when he was mayor, are cheering and delighted that now racketeering charges are being brought against Rudy Giuliani. And the quote in the New York Daily News is that those guys are all really love Trump, but they hate Rudy because he'll only lock them up. So they're, if the mafia are going against you, then you've probably got a bit of a bad look. There you go. Crime buster Rudy, now a defendant. What a sad thing to see. But with all these other co-conspirators, they're all going to have their own legal teams, aren't they, Lizzie? That will just slow it down automatically. Some of them are going to be trying to appeal and get their clients off and all the rest of it. But it does look like the run up to the next election, somehow or another, is going to be dominated by these court cases. Is it healthy? Does it show democracy and the system working well? Is it therefore, a good thing, and you've got to let the process happen? Or does it mean that America is just not going to be debating the issues that it should be ahead of a big national vote? It's going to come down again to your sleepy granddad or the orange lunatic, isn't it?
Yeah, in a way, yes, and it wouldn't be a normal. I don't see how you could have a normal presidential race if Trump was the candidate and was in the middle of all of these legal battles. But then you have this. But then on the other side, like you say, some of this stuff has to be done. He behaved in such an extraordinary way when he was president, and it seemed there was many times where it sort of seemed like there was no way of nothing would stick. There was no way of getting him to sort of apologize or feel or face any consequences for any of his actions. And so I think in a way it's important for I suppose for the public to see consequences for actions, whatever they are. But it is going to make for a very different kind of presidential race if Trump does get the nomination, because how are they going to sit there and talk about sort of school standards and things like that, which is really important for a lot of people, but when this is all going on in the background?
Exactly, and it's arguably had a bit of an impact on Biden's first administration anyway, as it is. Herbie on Facebook says that he's going to abscond. There's no way he's going to face jail. He'll leg it and be president in exile somehow or another, which is kind of the role he's already doing. Carl's back. He says, well, you have to ask yourself, who would you rather run the biggest economy in the world, Biden or Trump? One falls asleep and can't string a coherent sentence together, and the other is a successful, diverse businessman. Unfortunately, Carl, he's not a very successful businessman. He's gone bankrupt an awful lot of times, and that has not been a ploy. That's because he ran out of money. And there was an analysis done, I think it was by the New York Times, but I can't be sure. But if you Google this phrase, you'll be able to find it. There's an analysis done of the millions of dollars that Trump inherited as a young man from his father when he died, Fred Trump. And they put that amount of money, right, and they said if he had just invested that cash in the basic investment portfolio, the Standard & Poor thing that just, ticked up by so many percent a year very quietly. And it said, and I quote, if he had just invested that money and spent the rest of his life finger painting, Donald Trump would have more cash than he's got now. He's lost billions. He is not a successful businessman. He is a very poor businessman. If you or I, Carl, had lost as much money or as a proportion of our wealth, there you go. Thank you very much. Somehow Will in the back there has managed to find the thing I've immediately just mentioned. He would be richer if he just stuck it in the Fortune 500, basically. And if we have lost that much as a proportion of our wealth that whatever we inherit from our parents, we would be in jail, mate, just for losing the cash. Never mind Trump. So let's end this successful businessman business, right? Because it's not at all. Anyway. We'll have to wait and see what happens later on. As Lizzie said, it should be about 5 o'clock. It should be on the evening news, I would have thought, tonight at 6. But we'll probably carry some of the Trump perp walk here on the Mirror's social channel. So do come back and have a look and pass your comments on that when he does. It'll be interesting to see how much fake tan he's put on for the show.